Hello, how are you? This is Heena from Team Vallath, and today's line that made literature, or lines that made literature, is from A Tale of Two Cities. I'm so excited. This novel is very close to my heart. A Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens, of course. It's a historical novel which was first published in Dickens magazine all the year round. Later, it came in a book form in the year 1859. Setting of A Tale of Two Cities is London on one side, Paris on the other. That's how London is a city, Paris is another city. It becomes a tale of two cities during, before, and during the French Revolution. Major characters are there is this French doctor, Manette, his daughter Lucy, and many other, of course. There is Charles Darnay, there is Sidney Carton. You will know everything about them. But first, lines that made literature. I want to read it out to you. Let's read it together. Love for literature is here. That's how the novel starts. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. It was the age of wisdom, it was the age of foolishness. It was the epoch of belief, it was the epoch of incredulity. It was the season of light, it was the season of darkness. It was the spring of hope, it was the winter of despair. We had everything before us, we had nothing before us. We were all going direct to heaven. We were all going direct the other way. In short, the period was so far like the present period that some of its noisiest authorities insisted on its being received for good or for evil in the superlative degree of comparison only. Very powerful. Look at how the parallelism goes. Look at how the paradox is drawn here. Yes? Let's start. A Tale of Two Cities is actually divided into three books or three parts, we can say. First is the book, it's called Book the First, named as Recalled to Life. Recalled to Life. Then comes Book the Second, which is named The Golden Thread. Then comes Book the Third, The Track of a Storm. You will know who is recalled to life, who is called as the golden thread, and how does a storm come in Manette's household. Characters. Charles Darnay. Listen now. Charles Darnay is a French aristocrat belonging to a very royal family from France, but he loathes his family. Why? Because they act imperialists, they act authoritative and dictative, which Charles Darnay resents. He hates it. So, Charles Darnay, who was born as Charles Evremond, will you remember? Charles Darnay, who was born as Charles Evremond, he rejects his family's name, last name. Rather, he takes his mother's surname, Darnay, and he becomes Charles Darnay. So, a French aristocrat by birth who rejects his family's cruel ways, leaves France, chooses to live in England. Charles Darnay is kind, honest, and courageous. Charles Darnay will fall in love with the novel's heroine, Lucy Manette. Now, along with Charles, I want to bring in Charles's uncle, whose name is Marquis Saint Evremond. This uncle lives in France. He represents arrogance and exploitation of the French nobility. During the course of the novel, he will run his coach over a little peasant boy. Yes, Marquis Evremond is going to kill a boy on the road of France. And on that night, he will be killed himself by this boy's father. You will remember, I'm trying to bring the similar characters together so that you will remember them. So connect Charles Darnay with his uncle Marquis Saint Evremond. Done till here, let's move on to more characters. Now, Dr. Alexandre Manette and Lucy Manette, who are they? Dr. Alexandre Manette is a physician. He is a French physician, you can say. He was unjustly imprisoned in the Bastille for 18 years. Okay? Why? Because he was witness of cruelty of the Evremond family. Why was Dr. Manette imprisoned in the Bastille? Bastille is the French prison, French fortress, which acted like a prison, because he witnessed the cruelty, a very, very disastrous event which happened because of the Evremond household. Evremonds here. Lucy Manette is Dr. Manette's daughter, who has thought that her father, Dr. Alexandre, is dead. But years later, the two meet. Lucy lives in Dover, in England. Will you remember? Yes, you will. Lucy is the golden thread in this novel. In A Tale of Two Cities, who is the golden thread? Lucy. Why? Because she believes in spirituality. Like a thread, she binds everyone together. She's gold because of her power of beauty, chastity, hope, and healing. That's Lucy. So Dr. Alexandre Manette is Papa, imprisoned in Bastille. Lucy Manette is his daughter. Let's move on to more characters. Miss Pross is Lucy Manette's governess, and a very devoted governess who takes care of Lucy. Jarvis Lorry. Jarvis Lorry is an elderly, reliable businessman who works at a bank called as Tellson's Bank. He's a loyal friend of the Manette's family. He is the one who will come to know that Alexandre Manette is alive. Jarvis Lorry is the one who is going to tell the news of Manette's living to Lucy Manette. Will you remember? Yes. Now talk about the Defarges. All the sadness that will come into the novel at the end, the revolution, the killings will actually happen. Connect them with the Defarges. The Defarges were the former servants of Dr. Alexandre Manette. Yes, they were servants. Now they own a wine shop. And along with owning a wine shop, the Defarges, that is Mr. Defarge and Madame Defarge, they are revolutionary leaders in Paris. They are the ones that from their wine shops circulate valuable information. They are preparing quietly for a revolution which will turn into the French Revolution. People like the Defarges, they will be out. They will go and kill all the aristocrats. They will just blast the Bastille prison, take out all the prisoners from there. But originally, the Defarges were servants of Dr. Alexandre Manette. Okay, you'll remember? You must be thinking, Heena keeps on saying, will you remember? Will you remember? It's just like a cliche line that I have. Chalo आगे बढ़ते हैं. Jerry Cruncher, a porter from Tellson's Bank who secretly works as a grave robber or a resurrection man. Not an important character, but in case, if a question comes, who is the grave robber or the resurrection man in A Tale of Two Cities, you should know he's Jerry Cruncher. ठीक? आगे बढ़े. And of course, ये character के बिना तो A Tale of Two Cities cannot move on. He is the man of self-sacrifice. He is the man who will give himself for love at the end of the novel. His name is Sidney Carton. Sidney Carton is an alcoholic English lawyer who resembles Charles Darnay. Yes, Sidney Carton and Charles Darnay are lookalikes. Being lookalikes, they fall in love with the same woman, Lucy. So this novel, A Tale of Two Cities, will actually talk about a love triangle between Sidney Carton, Charles Darnay, Lucy Manette, and also about Sidney Carton's sacrifice for Lucy Manette. With this, we're done with the characters. Now let's come to the summary. I'll be quick, and I made it so easy, so easy. You will remember it in one go, I promise. The year is 1755. Jarvis Lorry, who is a respectable banker from Tellson's Bank, is on his way to Dover. Why? Who lives in Dover? Lucy Manette. So Jarvis Lorry is basically a family friend of the Manettes. On his way, he writes a cryptic message called as recalled to life. What does Jarvis Lorry write? Recalled to life, which means Dr. Alexandre Manette is back to life. He was never dead. That is what this message means. So recalled to life is written for Dr. Alexandre Manette. In Dover, Jarvis Lorry meets a young girl named Lucy Manette. Lucy Manette's life is going to change because Jarvis tells Lucy, your papa is alive. He's not dead. So together from Dover, they go to Paris to meet their father, Dr. Alexandre Manette, who is now to be taken out from the prison. Okay. Lucy till now had believed that her father was dead, but he's alive. But when she meets him, she finds him an extremely disturbed man who is in pain and torture. He works as a cobbler. He's only mending shoes. He's making shoes. He's doing something with the shoes. That's the madness. That is the turmoil that Dr. Alexandre Manette is in, because he's locked away for years in the Bastille prison, which has made him broken, which has given him this void in his heart. He cannot recognize anyone. And when Lucy meets her father, she says, "You can bear it. It is your daughter who loves you." From here onwards, Lucy shows only love to her father. Lucy brings Manette to England. She takes care of him. And after pouring all the love that Lucy has into her father slowly improves. Dr. Manette's mental health improves. He starts smiling again. And here I want to talk about the Defarge. Please, let's remember again. Alexandre Manette was being cared for by an old servant of Alexandre, whose name is Ernest Defarge. Ernest Defarge now runs a little wine shop in a poor town of France with his wife, Madame Therese Defarge. These Defarges are passionate advocates of the revolution. They regularly bring and send information from their wine shop. Easy? Let's move on. Now, let's ask, who is Charles Darnay? Who is Sidney Carton? See, when the Manettes were returning to England from Paris, on the way, they met this Frenchman, immigrant Frenchman, who was from France but lives in England. His name is Charles Darnay. So basically, Lucy and Charles Darnay met on the way to England. Okay. Now they meet again, this time in a courtroom, in a London courtroom. Year is 1780. Lucy and her father, Dr. Alexandre Manette, are sitting in a London courtroom. In this courtroom, the trial is going on for a Frenchman named Charles Darnay. What is the accusation on Charles Darnay? He is on trial for treason. He is accused of spying for France, that is, taking valuable information from England and sending it to France. That's a spy. So Charles Darnay is accused of being a spy of France, and therefore he's here for a trial in an English courtroom. He's about to be proven guilty. But just then, a very clever lawyer enters the courtroom. The name of this lawyer is, this eccentric lawyer who is alcoholic, is Sidney Carton. Sidney Carton looks at Charles Darnay and he is shocked because he looks just like Charles Darnay. Sidney Carton, Charles Darnay look alikes, look the same. So, because Sidney Carton has been asked to save Charles Darnay, Sidney Carton says we are look-alikes. And then Darnay actually, things change. This is used to confuse the prosecution's key witness, and nobody knows like who's the real spy, or is the story even true, or is Charles Darnay even a spy? Ultimately, the result of this trial is that Charles Darnay is acquitted. Acquitted means he's free to go. He's not proven guilty by the court. Okay, now let's start with the love affair. After this, both Darnay and Carton become regular visitors to the Manette family, to the Manette home, to Lucy and Dr. Alexandre. And of course, they fall in love with Lucy because she is a girl worth falling in love too. Worth falling in love with. Lucy is, abhi thoda character sketch about these three people, major characters. Lucy Manette is beautiful physically and mentally. She possesses a gift for bringing out the best qualities of those people around her. She binds everyone together. Darnay is honorable, Charles Darnay. Honorable, hardworking, and gentle. Sidney Carton, on the other hand, is brilliant but bitter. This lawyer drowns his time in drinking. So, when given a chance, who will Lucy choose, Charles Darnay or Sidney Carton? Of course, Charles Darnay. Who wants a drunkard in her life? So Lucy chooses Charles Darnay and they marry with Dr. Manette's blessing. But now the story is taking a turn. On the wedding day of Lucy and Darnay, Alexandre Manette learns Darnay's real identity. Darnay is not Darnay. Darnay is not Darnay. Darnay is Evremond. It was because of Evremonds that Manette was in the prison for all these years in France. Evremonds are the enemies of Manette's. And now Evremond has become Manette's son-in-law. He's marrying Dr. Alexandre's daughter Lucy. But Alexandre Manette is quiet. Yes, he relapses into madness, but he recovers. He does not say anything for the sake of his daughter Lucy. Right? Now let's talk about the French Revolution of 1789. Years pass by after their marriage. Lucy and Darnay happily live in London, a quiet life, a beautiful life. They give birth to a daughter, little Lucy. Sidney Carton, who had loved Lucy, remember now Sidney Carton has become friends with the Manettes. He actually promised something to Lucy. He said, "For you and for any dear to you, I would do anything. I would embrace any sacrifice." Remember these words. Sidney Carton is going to sacrifice himself at the end of the novel because he promised to Lucy, "For you and for any dear to you, I would do anything. I would embrace any sacrifice." And then across the English Channel, the French Revolution explodes. What happens? The Bastille falls. Aristocrats are slaughtered and murdered brutally. The Evremond estate is burned to the ground. And now the you can say the servants at Evremond's want Charles back to be executed. Ooh. Listen, 3 years later, Charles Darnay, who's living a quiet life with his family in England, receives a letter from his loyal servant of France. The name of this servant is Gabelle. Gabelle sends a letter. He says, "I'm in prison. I need your help, master." So secretly, Charles Darnay elopes to France. Does he act naive or does he act in good faith? Darnay travels to Paris only to be arrested as an enemy of the state, because during French Revolution, whoever was rich, whoever was aristocrat was getting executed, murdered, arrested. That is what was the truth of the French Revolution, right? What began as a revolution turned into mass slaughtering of the aristocrats. Oh. Now, following this, of course, the Manettes also they run to France. They want to save Charles Darnay. Because Dr. Alexandre Manette was in the prison in Bastille for so many years, he's able to take out his son-in-law from the prison, but just for a few hours, because on the same night, Charles Darnay is re-arrested. And this time, the evidence comes in the form of a letter that Manette had written in Bastille by himself. This letter talks about the cursed Avremond family. Dr. Manette curses the Avremond family in this letter for their horrific crimes. What are the crimes connected by the Evremonds? You know, the twin brothers, that is Charles Darnay's papa and his uncle. They assaulted, physically tortured a young peasant girl. They killed her brother. And who is this girl's sister who was raped? This girl's sister is Madame Defarge. Madame Defarge, who was a servant to Dr. Alexandre, whose husband served Dr. Alexandre. Now Dr. Alexandre's son-in-law is Charles Evremond. Evremonds killed Madame Defarge's family. Madame Defarge is high on revenge. She wants to kill not only Charles Darnay, but his entire family, which means Madame Defarge wants Charles Darnay dead, Lucy Manette dead, little Lucy dead. Sidney Carton hears all this. Sidney Carton cannot let Lucy die. Sidney Carton cannot see any harm coming on Lucy. So Sidney Carton decides to be sentenced by the guillotine, to die by the guillotine. Why? Because of course he can take places. He can exchange places with Charles Darnay. Remember, they are lookalikes. Sidney Carton decides to exchange places with Charles Darnay. So with the help of, a spy, he enters into the prison where Darnay is. He drugs Darnay, replaces himself there, sends Darnay. So Lucy, her daughter, Dr. Alexandre Manette, they all flee Paris. Of course, Sidney Carton is there in the prison. Charles Darnay is also taken. He's in an intoxicated state because he was drugged by Carton. So Charles Darnay, they all leave Paris. Who all leave Paris? Look, I've written. Lucy, her daughter, Dr. Manette, flee Paris. Mr. Laurie also flees Paris. Darnay, of course, flees Paris. Carton calmly walks to his fate. Carton now is about to die by the guillotine. Sidney Carton here exclaims, a night before he's dead, he exclaims very famous lines from A Tale of Two Cities. It is a far, far better thing that I do, than I have ever done. It is a far, far better rest that I go to than I have ever known. Carton says this. It is a far, far better thing that I do now that I've ever done. That is, he's sacrificing himself. He feels now he's worthy. So the next morning, Sidney Carton is walking upwards to be killed. And, he is accompanied by this young seamstress who also faces death by the guillotine. And young seamstress tells Sidney Carton, I'm not afraid. I'm weak. Would you mind if you held my hand? And Sidney Carton holds the seamstress's hand. They both walk up to be killed, to be executed by the guillotine during the French Revolution in France. With this, we are done with the Tale of Two Cities. Let's come back to the lines that made literature. I want to remind you, the opening lines of A Tale of Two Cities is, it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. And the closing lines of A Tale of Two Cities is, it is a far, far better thing that I do than I have ever done. It is a far, far better rest that I go to than I have ever known. Along with this, here is the cherry on the cake. I have given you more quotes from this novel. I'm not going to read it. You're going to do this homework by yourself. I hope you loved this video. Of course, you have to share it with your friends and relatives who are literature enthusiasts just like you. This is Heena from Team Vallath. We are on this series called as Lines That Made Literature. Take care of yourself. Take care of yourself. Bye-bye.